Very good afternoon to one and all. I'm Dr. Lakshmi Narayan from Public Health Dentistry, welcoming you all to the webinar on the occasion of World No Tobacco Day of 2021. Commit to quit. Today, we have a webinar on motivational interviewing in tobacco cessation counseling. Let us begin the program with the intention. I invite Dr. Zaid to recite the prayer.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Thank you.
Now I invite Dr. Rekha Shenoy, Head of the Department of Public Health Dentistry, to welcome the gathering.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi Narayan, and I wish everybody a good afternoon. 8 million deaths per year, 1.2 million of those due to secondhand smoke, a grossly underestimated 270 million users in India only, and India having the dubious distinction of being the second largest producer and consumer. All of this attributable to one and one substance only, tobacco. We observe World No Tobacco Day every year to reaffirm our commitment to a tobacco-free world and to healthy life and healthy living. It is our privilege to have as chief guest today the Registrar of Yenapoya Deemed to be University, Dr. Gangadhar Somayaji. His unstinting support and his wise counsel have been the bedrock of our department activities. I thank him for accepting our invite in spite of his hectic administrative and academic schedule. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
The presiding officer of today's program and the youthful thank you, sir. The presiding officer of today's program and the youthful and effervescent dean of Yenapoya Dental College, Dr. Akhtar Hussain, has been leading from the front and has helped us countless times with his advice and experience. It is my privilege to have him here as the presiding officer of our program, and I welcome you, sir, to this forum.
Thank you.
Our keynote speaker today, Dr. Rajesh G, heads the Department of Public Health Dentistry at MCODS, Bangalore. His rich experience in tobacco cessation and motivational interviewing will enrich our participants, and we hope this will further research and advocacy on these particular topics. I welcome Dr. Rajesh. I also welcome the associate deans, heads of departments, faculties, postgraduate students, interns and students of Yenapoya Dental College and other institutions within our campus and from around Bangalore and other cities. Your presence is a testimony to the commitment of the medical fraternity to tobacco control. Winners never quit and quitters never win. There are no failures, only quitters. These quotes are a contrast to the World No Tobacco Day theme for 2021, commitment to quit. There are 780 million people worldwide who want to quit, but only 30% have access to help. With COVID-19 showing a heightened severity among smokers, I consider it our duty to facilitate the theme of this year's World No Tobacco Day. I thank you all for being here, and I hand over back to Dr. Lakshmi Narayan. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, and welcome to you as well. I'm sure today's day will be very fruitful.
Thank you, Lakshmi.
Learning about how to quit and motivational interviewing, how beneficial it can be in helping people to quit tobacco. Now, I welcome the chief guest of the day, our registrar, Dr. Gangadhar Somayaji, to speak a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lakshmi Narayan. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. respected presiding officer and the Dean Faculty of Dentistry, Dr. Akhtar Hussain, the speaker, invited speaker for today, Dr. G. Rajesh, Professor and Head, Public Health Dentistry, MCOTS, Mangalore, Dr. Rekha Shanai, Head of the Department of Public Health Dentistry, Dr. Imran, the NSS Program Officer, Dental College, faculty members from the vice principals from the dental college, faculty members from the various departments of the dental college, and my dear students, a good afternoon. In fact, for a person like me, every day is a no tobacco day. In fact, for a person who has already quit, who was a smoker earlier but now has already quit, for him also, the future days are no tobacco days only. But for the person who doesn't have the motivation to quit, only May 31st is a no tobacco day, and from June onwards it is full tobacco day. So ultimately that is what is happening year after year. We have been observing every year May 31st as no tobacco day. People with all the enthusiasm on the earth, they will take an oath, in fact pledge that they will quit tobacco and they will never even smell it. But from next day onwards, back to square one. That is the story what has been happening. Probably, it's a sort of blessing in disguise that the COVID has come now. Maybe our media should take this as an opportunity, and instead of highlighting just news about COVID, they should inform or educate the public what COVID is going to cause in smokers. As Dr. Rekha rightly put it, COVID is one disease which has an affinity for the lungs, and as such smokers have bad lungs, and put together that is the worst scenario. In fact, maybe if all of us can educate the public today that in smokers the chances of COVID are higher, the chances of pulmonary complications are much more, and ultimately the chances of morbidity and including mortality are also higher. If we can get this message across to the public, probably this tobacco, no tobacco day, this year's no tobacco day will be much more fruitful. And next year probably we may have much lesser numbers probably to talk to. I congratulate the department for having invited a wonderful prolific speaker who is going to probably entertain us for the next 1 hour or so. And these kind of activities, as I said already, are really required. Whether it is going to give any benefit or not, these kind of activities are the only way to educate the public. And we all have our responsibility to not only treat patients, but also educate the public in the sort of as a sort of preventive measures so that they don't get any tobacco related illness. I need not in fact reiterate that tobacco is one of the major causes for non-communicable diseases in India. Being an ENT surgeon, I have seen so many malignancies which are exclusively caused by the tobacco overuse. Please let us all work together and try to develop or make everybody as a healthy into a healthy lifestyle and develop into a healthy society. Thank you for inviting me to share some of my thoughts today. Thank you once again, and I wish the program all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Even World Health Organization has this year started with the campaign of supporting people for quitting tobacco to reduce the risk of severe COVID-19. And I'm sure even the Indian government and our Indian media should highlight this and use this COVID-19 for the benefit of the reduction in tobacco usage. Now I invite our beloved Dean Dr. Akhtar Hussain to deliver presidential address.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dear Dr. Somyaji, the chief guest of today's program, Dr. Rajesh, the speaker of the day, dear vice principals, Dr. Rekha, Dr. Imran, Dr. Lakshmi, and the faculty, other faculty members of public health dentistry, Dr. Praveen Jodali, postgraduates from various colleges, interns, and dear students. Tobacco use in any form is a major risk factor for cause of cancer. We all know it, which kills more than 8 million people each year, and more than 7 million of these deaths are due to tobacco abuse. While around 1.2 million are a result of non-smokers being exposed to secondhand smoke. In addition, evidence releases this year shows that smokers were more likely to develop severe disease with COVID-19 compared to non-smokers. As our registrar was saying, it's time to educate these people. They're sitting locked up in the houses. There is more chance, more stress, and more chance of smoking also. So in the ringtone, probably they should change or add, make it shorter and add, don't smoke at these times at least. So by then, this may be a good time for them to quit. This is one good time to quit. So this World No Tobacco Day is created by the member states of WHO in somewhere 1987. Is observed around the world every year on this 31st May, linking each year to a different tobacco-related theme. Tobacco use is highly addictive. We know that. Very difficult to come out of it once they used it. Very easy to tell them. And the theme of the World Tobacco Day today is commit to quit. On a lighter vein, I remember a joke. A friend of mine used to tell me, quitting tobacco is very easy. I have done it so many times. That should not happen. Quit means quit one way. And this yearly observance, informs and encourages public on the dangers of using tobacco. A multifaceted approach that integrates health education by public messages disseminated through education campaigns and mass media, tobacco and alcohol control, early detection, and early treatment is needed to reduce the burden of this eminently preventable cancer. World is full of challenges. It's all about overcoming it. Dr. Rajesh Ji from MCOTS Mangalore is with us as a speaker, on motivational interviewing. And I'm very curious to know how it can be done, one-to-one. I'm sure it was a very interesting talk. I thank you, Doc, for coming, and I also congratulate all who are involved in this major challenge, particularly student council members and all the students who are involved in this. Stay blessed, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I invite Dr. Imran Pasha to deliver pledge to the delegates of the today's program.
Yep. As a part of the University Commission's recommendations, today we are going to deliver the pledge, and I request all the participants to repeat after me. On this occasion of World No Tobacco Day, I take a pledge.
On the occasion of World No Tobacco Day, I take a pledge
that I shall never smoke.
That I shall never smoke.
That I shall never smoke
And consume any type of tobacco products in my life.
and any type of
And
tobacco
consume
products
any type of tobacco and consume any
in my life.
motivate family,
and
and
motivate my
motivate my
family.
family
life
and motivate my family.
acquaint or
or
acquaintances to
acquaintances
not to smoke
Acquaintances
not
not
to
not
Or
not to
or
smoke
acquaintances not to smoke
to smoke
any tobacco products and use
and use
to
any
use
tobacco products
tobacco
and
products
use any
any
product.
tobacco
any tobacco product.
I shall keep the
of my
campus
office
of my
tobacco
Shall
office
free
keep
tobacco
I
free
shall keep I shall keep the campus of my office tobacco free
and shall also motivate my colleagues for the same.
and shall
and
and
shall
shall
also
also
motivate
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 colleagues
my colleagues
colleagues.
for
for
the
the
same.
same.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Imran. Now I invite
Not a
Dr.
single
Praveen
photo
Jodali
by take place, okay? Only the girls, please.
to deliver vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi Narayan. A very good afternoon to one and all. It's an honor to have been asked to offer vote of thanks on this occasion. On the behalf of my entire department, I thank and offer my gratitude to our Honorable Chancellor Alhaj Abdullah Kuni, Pro Chancellor Enapoya Farad, our Vice Chancellor M. Vijay Kumar sir. I deem it an honor and privilege to thank our respected chief guest of today's program, the Registrar of Yenapoya deemed to be University, Dr. Gangadhar Somayaji, sir. Thank you very much for gracing the occasion.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm very grateful to our beloved Dean, Dr. Akhtar Hussain, sir, of Yenapoya Dental College for supporting us and backing us in all our programs and all our endeavors. Thank you very much, sir, for supporting us throughout.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wholeheartedly thank our Vice Deans, Dr. Shambhat sir, Dr. Chhatra sir, and Maji ma'am for backing us and supporting us. Thank you very much, sir. We have been very fortunate to have the renowned identity from academic background of public health dentistry, Dr. Rajesh Rao. He's been presently serving as HOD of Manipal College of Dental Sciences, Mangalore. Thank you, sir, for accepting to be the speaker for this particular program. On a personal note, I know Dr. Rajesh as a postgraduate student. I know sir since 2008. He's been a friend, a mentor, and a guide to me personally during my PG days. And also, sir has been on the doctoral committee of the PhD in Yenapoya deemed to be University. So, sir has contributed immensely in my PhD topic, which I fortunately finished last year. And my topic was on tobacco surveillance. So, sir has, because of his vast experience, sir has immensely contributed in my topic. Sir, on a personal note, I thank you very much for all the support you have rendered to me, and you have guided me in completing my PhD research. And last but not the least, I thank Dr. Imran Pasha, NSS program officer, who has taken this particular initiative. And we do this No Tobacco Day program year by year, and it has always been a successful event. Thank you, Dr. Imran. And it has been a tribute to host all the faculty members of our college and from other colleges on this particular day. And I wholeheartedly thank each and everyone who have joined through this particular forum online to make this particular event a successful one. Thank you. Thank you once again. Have a good day. Thank you all. Over
Thank
to
you,
you,
Dr.
Lakshmi.
Praveen. I find it my privilege to invite you today to our program, Dr. Rajesh. And I'm sure many of us know Dr. Rajesh, but it is customary to introduce the speaker of the day to the audience. Dr. Rajesh is working as the head of the department in the public health dentistry of Manipal College of Dental Sciences, Mangalore. He has finished his BDS from VS Dental College, Bangalore, and MDS in public health dentistry from SDM College of Dental Sciences and Hospital, Dharwad. He has completed PhD from Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Manipal in 2017. Sir has also done various degrees like PG diploma in tobacco control from Public Health Foundation of India. He has done PG Diploma in Epidemiology from Public Health Foundation of India, and also MA in Psychology from Indira Gandhi National Open University. Sir has a vast experience of research and teaching. He has been teaching in public health dentistry for more than 15 years now, and has a lot of publications, more than 40 publications in international and national journals. Sir has received a lot of appreciation in the form of grants in the various forums like Indian Council of Medical Research. He received a grant of around 22 lakhs for the project Sense of Coherence and Determinants of Oral Health Among Young Adults in Mangalore. And he has also received travel grant of £3,000 from UK India Education Research Institution in 2013. Sir has contributed immensely in the field of tobacco control, and I'm sure he is going to enlighten you today. If you already have not been exposed to the topic of motivational interviewing, definitely is going to be very, very helpful. If you are not, if you are a beginner, then I'm sure today you will be enlightened about the new field, which can be of very much use in helping tobacco addicts in quitting. I invite Dr. Rajesh. Please take over, and you can start with the session, sir. Dr. Rajesh?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible?
Good afternoon, sir. You are audible, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
In start.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, is my slides, are my slides visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Good afternoon, one and all. Respected dignitaries, Registrar in Enapa University, Dr. Akhtar Hussain, sir, Principal, Enapa Dental College, Dr. Rekha Shenoy, Professor and Head Department of Public Health Dentistry, Enapa Dental College, Dr. Praveen, Dr. Lakshminarayan, Dr. Junaid. Yes, good afternoon. At the outset, I would like to thank your team for having invited me for this wonderful discussion. And thank you for your generous words, Dr. Praveen. There's a small correction. It's all your hard work that has seen you through. And we've hardly done anything. The credit definitely goes to you. Yes, this is today's.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, this is today's discussion. Okay, motivational interview in tobacco cessation counseling. Yes, this is my workplace where I work. Okay, this is the contents. We'll just go through the contents. Okay, we'll start off with introduction. Now, let's assume that a person is moving from point A to point B. Okay, for him to move.
Sir, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. Sir, did you
Yeah.
change any slides?
Yeah,
Or it is not moving, sir. Just stop presenting and again present, sir. I think some issues.
okay, okay, okay. All right.
So you can share the entire screen. I think
Only the slides, is it?
not only the slide, entire screen,
Yeah,
sir.
can-
Only slide. Yeah, now we can see.
Is
Sir.
it? It's visible, right? Okay.
Just change the slides, sir. One or two.
Are the
Yeah,
slides
it
moving
is
up?
fine. Yeah, yes, 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 yes. Perfect.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Done. Yes, this is the title, like you all know. This is my workplace. These are the contents. Okay, so we'll start off with the introduction. Supposing a person has to move from point A to point B. Okay, so the best method of getting him to move is to communicate, right? So first you will tell him, "Arey Baba, move from point A to point B." Okay, then you'll tell him point B is very good and it's better than point A and blah blah blah. You give him some incentives and all that. Then after some time, if it doesn't work, you'll scare him. Hey, if you don't move from point A to point B, I'll hit you. you call the police, I'll kill you, whatever. Okay, you move. Okay, you try to move him. Okay, then still if it doesn't work, okay, then you'll have to look at the motivation that is intrinsic within that individual. Okay, only then that movement from point A to point B will be sustained. Okay, for true movement to occur from point A to point B in mind, body, and spirit, so to speak, the whole person has to move to point B, right? So for that, the only person who can move is the person himself. Okay, these are the basic fundamental concepts of motivational interviewing. Okay, and then you'll have to look at what is that motivates that person. Okay, and then you'll have to help him to move from point A to point B. Okay, and this is very true for all the teachers. Okay, I'll call them the modern world teachers, because when we were students, it was a very different scenario. It was jungle kanon, right? Like it was. I'm sure that if such practices are carried out today, the teachers will be booked for human rights violation. Okay, so this is for all very, very, very senior faculty members will vouch for this. Whatever was happening then during their UG days, okay, or what they've heard, okay, if they are carried today, so then all those teachers will be booked for human rights violation. This includes my 6-year-old son also, who's studying in first standard. Okay, of course, thanks to COVID, it's all online now, online teaching, online exams, everything is online. Still, even in online, you cannot shout at anybody, right? You definitely cannot shout at tobacco, people who consume tobacco, right? Hey, idiot! You can't say all those things, right? So you just have to sit back. That's motivational interviewing. Okay, you just have to sit back, and then the patient will decide everything. You are just there to talk to him. Okay, we'll just get to the details. This might sound a little vague and confusing and weird. Okay. And the third example I give is parenting. Do you think the new generation kids will listen to the parenting techniques of earlier techniques that we used to have? Our parents used to hit us and then ask what happened, right? First is one phada they'll give and then say what happened. Even if you fall down, okay, even if you're crying, they'll give one whack, okay? Then they'll say, why did you fall down, right? But things have changed. You cannot hit, okay? There are laws in the Western world which will prevent parents, they'll separate the children from their parents if they get to know that parents are hitting their children, right? So in parenting also this works wonderfully because the actual behavior change will happen only if the kids actually want that to happen. So you have to tap into that motivation. That is motivational interviewing. The fourth example I didn't quote is husband and wife's interactions. Do you think all husbands will be able to inculcate behavior change in their wives? Okay, and the wives will definitely ask this counter question. Do you think all the wives will be able to inculcate behavior change easily in their husbands? Okay, so it's that cat and mouse game is always there, right? The Tom and Jerry game is always there between spouses, right? So you will realize that the actual behavior change will occur only if the actual person is that motivation within the individual is working. So you'll have to tap into that. Okay, then to contrast this, we'll look at traditional model of motivation. Okay, when a person comes for tobacco cessation counseling, we know that the quit rates can be very low, right? It can be 30% is a very good quit rate. It can be as low as 3 to 4 to 5%, which means that for every 100 individuals you talk, that is after you get get training in counseling and you are fully into tobacco cessation full time. So for every 100 individuals, the lowest thing is 5 individuals quit. Okay, or it can be even lower than that if your luck is good. So it can move up to 30%. So you have a vast majority of 70% of individuals who do not quit. Okay, so almost all motivational properties are individuals' personality, the client's, the patient's personality. So they usually blame the patient. Usually say, oh, patient is not motivated. That's what we say, right? So patient is not willing to quit. Patient is addicted so much. That's what we say, right? So, and most of the individuals we feel it's called as bottoming out phenomenon, wherein health deterioration precedes before the patient was ready. So this works typically for alcoholics, right? So when individuals, if you see alcoholics, only if their health deteriorates so much that in the mornings they're drinking, they're always in their drunk state, and their work, of course, is affected, everything is affected, only then they will consult the doctor or whoever has to take care of them, right? So bottoming out is a classical phenomenon that is observed in most of the developing countries, I would say. So most of these therapeutic failures are clients' issues. Okay, and if the outcomes are good, then they will definitely say program was good, or the counselor was good, or the doctor was good. They'll never say patient was very well motivated. Sabash, patient, they will not say, right? So client is in a no-win situation. Okay, if you go through this again, if the client quits, of course the doctor was good, yeah, wonderful doctor here, too much is. Whereas if the patient doesn't quit, see, patient is not motivated. See, you're seeing this no-win situation for patients. So this is very, very typical for tobacco cessation, and of course they say it's alcohol de-addiction programs. So at the outset, motivational interviewing originated from alcohol de-addiction clinics, alcohol de-addiction programs. And of course now it's taken it's gaining momentum, definitely. So this is called as defensive attribution. So we are in an era of defensive medicine. Patient comes, simply IOPS, simply OPG, simply MRS. Like, we are defensive right now because patients can always sue us. So either ways, whatever it is, we are looking at defensive attribution, and we are living in a comfortable attribution system for the therapist. The therapist, this attribution system works wonderfully for the doctors, for the therapists. Now there are 4 principles of motivation. So we'll just go through each of this one by. Most of these things are pretty self-explanatory. I just want you to focus specifically on cognitive dissonance. We'll come to cognitive dissonance. The first one, of course, is labeling. Now, in most of the, if you've gone to the wards, okay, I had the good fortune of visiting psychology patients in hospital wards on rounds. Okay, morning psychiatrist goes, no. The patients will not acknowledge that they are psychiatry patients because everybody around them will make, oh, this patient is mad. You understand that stigma? That stigma of a psychiatrist visiting a patient in a hospital with a lot of people around is so strong that the patient refuses to acknowledge that this person is his doctor and he is his patient. Okay, so that labeling is traditionally very important. First, the patient should accept that he's a smoker. The patient should first accept that he's an alcoholic. The patient should first accept that he has mental health problems. So this is a problem in India. Why? Because if you talk to any random smoker, 99.99% will never accept that labeling. Okay. Hello. Yes. So I hope I'm audible. So most of the patients, yeah. Thank you. Yes, most of the patients will not accept labeling. Okay. See, all of us have our own addictions, right? So we have coffee. I drink coffee or tea at 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock. This is my biological clock. If somebody tells me I'm an addict, coffee addict, then I'll say, no, I just drink only 2 cups of coffee a day, right? So that's what we say, right? So this labeling is not required. So this is one of the most important principles of motivation, because the moment you label a person, his self-esteem vanishes. His self-respect disappears. So we should abstain from labeling. So, and more importantly, there is no evidence of therapeutic superiority if labeling is done. Okay, if the patient actually accepts, okay, doctor, I'm a smoker, please help me. If the patient tells that, also there is no evidence of therapeutic superiority for that labeling. Okay, second thing is it is not necessary for behavior change. Okay, but there are many tons and tons and tons of studies which have shown that people who have quit tobacco were not labeled. Okay, and even if labeling is done, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. So one thing is we have to respect the self-esteem of the patient. Okay, self-respect of the patient. So what is important is we should switch from the patient to the problems associated with the disease or the habit. So this is one very important switch that we need to make. So we should not blame the patient. Victim blaming is there, no? So I'm sure most of the dentists, we have done scaling, right? We have done hand scaling as a part of training. And after 1 hour of scaling, okay, hand scaling that is, your hands will be aching, your digits, you'll realize there are so many muscles in your hands, right? So you'll realize, oh, this is aching, there is aching, your neck, back, everything is like you feel like throwing the instrument and whacking the patient. Say, idiot, see, you can't brush your teeth. Simple, see, you're giving me so much of work. So that comes right automatically for us. So that victim blaming, we should abstain from this victim blaming. Second thing is MI is heavy on individual responsibility. The client has to decide everything. Guys, if there is one word, one sentence definition of motivational interviewing, client does everything. Okay, what does the counselor do? Nothing. Like, so many times, many of the students, PG students and people with whom I've interacted, they've asked, sir, then what does the counselor do? Okay, we'll come to that. So motivational interviewing bestows all the responsibility to the client. So client will decide what his problem is. You will not say what the problem is. Very important, right? Client will decide what needs to be done. This everybody will agree. Correct. Of course, even in routine treatment, we'll say, of course, we don't decide what has to be done. If a patient comes with missing tooth, okay, you will say that, okay, you require RPD, FPD, and implant. If you see iPhone in patients, and implant patient, yeah, like that's what we think, right? But the patient has to decide everything. Okay, you are there only to provide information. That's it. Okay, that too, if the patient wants. That too, if the patient permits. So this is the finer differences in motivational interviewing. See, most of the routine practices, we follow the second one. Patient will decide what needs to be done. What the problem is also will be decided by the patient. Okay, counselor is just a bank with perspectives. You are only permitted to have your perspectives. Okay, you can have your knowledge and your alternatives. Client chooses finally. Okay, so with sufficient support, the counselor will support, and with conducive atmosphere. You need to have a conducive atmosphere in the clinics. The difficult decisions will be made a little more easier. Okay, coming to this atmosphere, I'll add a small comment here. If you have seen many of the tobacco cessation centers, there'll be one room, whatever, irrespective of the dimensions, and there'll be huge posters of people with big lesions and oral cancer and PMDs, potential malignant disorders, and all scary. It's bright red. Okay, do you think the patient will walk into that room? Okay, for us only to sit in that room will be obnoxious. After 5 minutes, we'll be wondering, why am I sitting in this room, right? So that atmosphere should be neutral. So this is one very, 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 very important component of all TCCs, tobacco cessation centers. Wherever you are doing counseling, wherever you are interacting with patients, keep it normal. How is your dental clinic? How is your dental hospital? How is your department? Keep it normal, absolutely normal. Nowhere should there be this negative vibes coming out. Okay, and you are there only to provide support. Next is internal attribution. This is similar to responsibility on the client. Okay, so these two are similar. See, there's something called as locus of control, right? We are all familiar with the internal locus and external locus. Okay, internal attribution or internal locus means that whatever happens, I'm in control of the present condition, and whatever happens, it's my responsibility, and I can change. I'm responsible for change. It's in my control, right? External attribution is, oh, whatever happens is because of accident, it's because of that circumstance, it's because of disease, or it is because of my parents, yeah, my family problem, my wife, yeah. I smoke because she, it's like that. So whenever it is beyond a person's control, then it's called as external attribution. Sustained change will happen only if it is internally attributed. This is very, very important. Okay. So first of all, the patient should be made to realize that the reason that he is in his present condition, whatever those factors are within himself, and he has control over those factors. That's important. One. Second thing is, if change happens, that also is because of the patient. Okay, so this is empowerment. The client, the patient will feel very empowered. Oh yes, man, correct. I have control over these things. Okay, so there's a big debate over alcoholics losing control. Okay, so traditionally we tend to think that, okay, alcoholics, after the first drink, first peg, they lose their control. He lost it here. It's like that, but they are disputing that. Okay, because even at that point of time, patient has control over what he wants. It's just that he favors one pattern of behavior. Okay, so that's empowerment. So you need to empower that a person can hold himself back. Okay, that's very important. Cognitive dissonance. We'll come to this cognitive dissonance. I'll show you this. First is there are two conflicting thought processes in individuals. most of the smokers know that smoking kills, right? It's common knowledge. Okay, you ask anybody when they're in their baseline state, right? When they're in the normal state, you talk to them. Yeah, correct. Smoking kills. I know. Everybody knows. It's there in school textbooks here. Okay, smoking is. That's why I keep telling. Smoking is not a public health problem. It's more of a policy problem. It's more of a political problem. Okay, we have cracked the code. We have cracked the code of tobacco, right? We know what tobacco does to cells. We know how at the genetic level we have mapped. These are the mutations. This is what this does, and this leads to carcinogenesis. Blah blah blah. That code is cracked, right? Still, the person smokes. I am a smoker. So you put both these together, there is imbalance. There is conflict. This is known as cognitive dissonance. Okay. So if you look at most of the all the doctors who are smoking, they know that smoking kills, right? Still, they are a smoker. They smoke, right? So this is known as cognitive dissonance. So a person may know that smoking is harmful, but they still smoke. So this leads to conflicts or disagreements. Patients will seek agreement. Okay, we'll see how this works. So the change should come here. I'm a smoker, right? So the change should come here. It should not come here. If it comes here, you know what happens? This is what most of the patients tell. Now, smoking kills. Not everybody who smoke will die, right? Doctor, this is what they say, right? So they're altering their belief systems and they're not altering their behavior, whereas it should be ulta. With cognitive dissonance, this is the key. When there is cognitive dissonance, the conflict should be resolved in favor of positive behavior. Their cognitions should not change. So this is what happens in most of the patients. Whenever patients come, and if you have spoken to a smoker in non-clinical atmosphere, they'll tell you wonderful stories, right? So they'll say, my grandfather he used to smoke for 50, 60 years. From the time I know, he's been smoking. I know. Okay, he had a wonderful life. He had wonderful thing. Smoking doesn't kill everybody. So they're altering their cognition. So the issue is cancer is a disease of probability. Right, so we can't predict who will get disease, who will not get disease. Okay, so there are many non-smokers who have got disease, right? Okay, because they are more prone for carcinogenesis. Okay, I have seen many individuals who have lost their lives with no genetic history, no habits. They still die of cancer, lung cancer. Okay, so why? Because their predisposition is it's like lucky dip. You never know what life offers you, right? So all diseases are diseases of probability, especially cancer. Okay, if you have interacted with anybody who's had a major issue, health problem, or they've lost their loved ones because of cancer, they'll tell you this. Okay, so they'll also tell you ki my neighbor, sir, not even no non-veg, no egg also, sir, no smoking, no alcohol, nothing, sir. Still he died of cancer, lung cancer. Why is that? So they are altering their cognition here. That's what is happening. Okay, which we should be very careful. The moment you get to cognitive dissonance in a patient, okay, when such patients come, please move them towards positive behavior change. Okay, you tell them that, see, you tell me one thing, okay, the probability of getting HIV with needle prick injury is 1 in 100, right? Or less than that, more than that. Let's assume it's 1 in 100. Can you predict which one prick will give you AIDS out of 100 pricks? Can you predict? No, right? So it's a matter of probability. So just because your head is strong doesn't mean you should put your head on a railway track. Right, a train don't come. Yeah, today there is band, there is strike there. So they are altering their cognitions, right? They'll say, no, there is derailment there. The railway track, no, it's not. The train will fall in between. It will not come. I will sleep here. See, they're altering their. This is exactly how smokers talk, right? How tobacco users talk. No, it will not happen to me. It happened to him. Like that it is. Okay, so there should be a way around. I usually give this patients this example. Trust me, I've told this to patients in our TCC. Sir, just because your head is drawn, does it mean you should put your head on the railway track, sir, and say a train won't come? And I've given this example to patients. They'll laugh and they'll play around. Doctor, they'll say all that. But guys, cognitive dissonance is an issue, no doubt. If you have spoken to doctors who smoke, okay, that's very interesting. Okay, so that's the assignment for this. I'm just kidding. Okay, but just try it once. Okay, just for the heck of it. Okay. Second thing is, you should talk to a public health dentist who smokes, or a public health person who smokes. They'll throw you with the meta-analysis, they'll give you odds ratios, they'll give you every evidence, and they will alter this. Okay, they'll alter this. They'll alter their cognitions. They will not alter their behavior. That's the issue with cognitive dissonance. Okay, so cognitive dissonance is a wonderful concept when it first was proposed. Okay, and how individuals deal with this cognitive dissonance. Yes, these are the 4 principles of motivation. So yes, next is, this is the spirit of motivational interviewing. Okay, many of the literature now, PACE is the acronym for that: partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. Partnership. Okay, we are working together. Please, you need to remember this. Okay, so clients are equal to counselors, patients are equal to doctors. We are on the same level. Okay, so that's one thing. Next is acceptance. Okay, so however the patient is, we need to accept them. Okay, let's not judge them. Let's not get judgmental. Okay, all of us have our own weird behaviors, right? Like I told, I have 11 o'clock coffee, 3 o'clock coffee. That's my biological clock. Ting, it hits me, right? So we have our own quirks, right? So you don't judge patients. You should value patients, every single patient of them. And you should genuinely tell this: I'm delighted to talk to you. I'm delighted to talk to you. Like, you know, of course, not so dramatically, but that should come across in a very clear, unfiltered manner. Okay, that you should accept the patient. Compassion, that's empathy. Like, genuinely, you should be interested in the health of the patients. You talk to any successful practitioner, they will vouch for this. Okay, the success mantra of any clinical practice is empathy. Okay, you should be genuinely interested in the health of others. Okay, you should be genuinely interested in making lives better for others. It's just compassion. Okay, it's just empathy and evocation. Okay, so you should give enough space for patients to talk to you. Okay, to unwind. Okay, so you have to evocate those responses from the patients. So I'll be sharing these slides with Imran and the team. Okay, please feel free. These are just acronyms for you to just remember things easily. That's it. Okay, so guys, these are the strategic goals of MI, motivational interviewing. You have to empower the patient. Okay, so you have to increase self-efficacy, increase self-esteem. So these are pretty self-explanatory, right? Self-efficacy is flossing. Flossing and all is too difficult, doctor. I don't know. Put the thread like this, that. I don't know. You should tell him, "Arey Baba, you can do it. Don't worry. It's not rocket science. You just have to. It's simple, right?" And sometimes even brushing will it will be very complicated. Okay. The first time that I read BAS technique during my usual, come on, this is like complicated. It looked very complicated. Then I realized, okay, we all have our own modified BAS technique, right? That's why it's beautifully named as modified BAS technique. Okay, but whatever it is, you need to tell them that you can do it. That's self-efficacy. Please don't hurt the self-esteem of patients at any given point of time. Very, 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 very important. And the third point is increase cognitive dissonance. This is a strategic goal. When I told this to some of the students, they were like shocked. Sir, we should not increase their confusion, sir. Nothing. It's not like that. Okay, so you should address cognitive dissonance in a positive way, such that there is behavior change. That's what I'm trying to tell. Okay, so these are the strategic goals. These are the strategies of MI. Okay, reflective listening. This is what most of the husbands do. They listen. I don't know if it is reflective listening or not. I don't know, but they listen. Okay, you have to listen. Okay, guys, this with patience you need to do this. Okay, you need to affirmation is reflective listening in the sense you need to listen. It's called as active listening, also called as reflective listening. So you need to be actively involved and take in everything that the patient tells. Okay, reflection is what the you'll be sometimes repeating the same patient. So you are telling me that you are smoking because you are stressed. So you are reflecting there. Okay, so it acts as a reinforcement. It also helps the patient in restructuring. Okay, so these things happen very, very subtly. Okay, and slowly you should move towards awareness building and consciousness raising. Okay, so we'll come to specifics. These are broad strategies, I'll tell you. So you should ask the patient, so how do you think smoking will affect your health? Okay, so you should tell, so how do you think quitting the habit will benefit you? So you are looking at awareness building. So, and you should elicit self-motivational statements. Sometimes, in the course of dialogue, patients will definitely tell, I know that I can do this, doctor. I know that I can quit, but there's something that's lacking, and so you'll tell both plus and minus. So you should look at the positive things. Tell him, I'm glad that you're realizing that you're able to quit. Okay, you're realizing that you can do it, which is very good. So you are looking at self-motivational statements, okay, and integrating objective assessments. Okay, that's there. Okay, so you can look at frequency of smoking, to number of cigarettes smoked, or whatever it is, number of packets of gutka consumed. So there should be an objective assessment. So these are the strategies. So we are looking at now implementing specific strategies. First is objective assessment. Of course, you have to first assess your routine practice, however you do it. Next is, of course, education. You have to hint towards knowledge, hint towards positive behavior change. So that educational component is there. Then you summarize. So whatever the patient tells, you should summarize it in a very neutral manner. Okay, a person is waiting in the bus stop for bus. Okay, it's a neutral statement. Person is agitated. Person is, oh, he must be late. So now I'm adding my own things here, right? Person, what do you see? A person is just waiting for bus in the bus stop. Okay, so you are saying, oh, he is going to meet his girlfriend. How do you know that? Oh, he is going to his house. He'll get it from his wife today. See, we are adding our own judgments, right? So many times we do this. You just have to state neutrally what you're seeing or what you're hearing. Okay, many times when we pass on the message to the HOD or Dean or HOI, whoever it is, we'll add our subtly, no, that's what he said, sir, I don't know. Like, it changes the whole whole context, whole message goes in a very different way. Okay, you have to summarize in a very neutral manner. Okay, it's that headlines, no? Sanjay Dutt found with guns in the car, one question mark. Of course, you are suggesting something there, but actually, in the court of law, you can say, I never said that he was found in Your Honor, that question mark was there. Now we know that subtly we are coloring things. Okay, whenever you are summarizing, you'll have to summarize it in a very neutral manner. Okay, trust me, it's difficult. Okay, suddenly when you realize that, oh no, nothing from you. Okay, guys, that's one of the foundation principles of MI is nothing from you, nothing from your side. Okay, it's all patient. Okay, and transition, of course, we'll come to stages of change and other things, and negotiation of alternatives. You have to give the patient alternatives. Like when the patient comes with who's partially dentulous, you have to tell him that RPD, FPD implants are there. It's up to him, right? So you can say, implants edda undiya, malla undiya, oh, Aishwarya Rai appundu. All that, you just have to give them a very neutral perspective. Okay, OVERS. Okay, so this is a very famous acronym. Okay, so MI motivational interviewing is equal to OVERS. Apparently, it's become like that. So I've devised a very short, easy way of looking at this. I'll give you examples of each of this. Okay, and you'll understand what I mean. Okay, open-ended questions. We all know what open-ended questions are. So what brings you here today? Okay, so many times I've seen this, guys. What, smoking or gutka? What? That's what we ask. No, when patients come to PCC, we ask them directly. No, you're a smoke. You smoke or you chew, right? That's the first question we ask. Smoking. See, start with very, very open-ended questions. Okay, what brings you here today? What do you like about your smoking? Is a very interesting thing. Patients will pour, somebody is asking me finally, what do you like about my smoking? Doctor, till now, nobody has asked me this. Okay, patients can suddenly pour out their story, right? And so what do you like about quitting? That's a very interesting question. They'll tell, okay, my kids, they hate me, doctor. And of course, my Insta updates and Facebook updates are not, I have to smile like that. So they will tell many things. Okay, you can ask this to the patient. Help me understand, how would you like things to be different? Okay, so you will have to ask that specifically. What do you want to do next? Okay, Boka. So you should ask that to the patient, right? So what do you want to do next? So the patient has to tell that. Okay, how can I help you with your problem? Okay, the last sentence is a bomb of a statement, guys. Trust me. The moment you say this in the right context, it is magic. Okay, so just imagine you're in one hopeless situation. Okay, you have to make an urgent call. Your battery is running out. There's no signal. That time somebody comes and asks you, "How can I help you?" Okay, Habba, then you're like, "Arey, you are God's gift to mankind. You are an angel to me." Have you ever felt that? Okay, very rarely, once or twice, I've actually gone through this. Okay, we are all into this academics and teaching, right? So we had to submit reports and deadlines and NAC and all those things. I had to submit one document, and then I called up, and the person on the other end said, "I'm here to help you." Okay, I was like so zapped. Okay, in that crunch moment, it's like Rahul Dravid, no? Like the whole team, everybody is. I'm sorry if I'm giving of course, Rahul Dravid and Cheteshwar Pujara is there now. So they are the ones who will stand there during crisis, right? So when somebody offers help when you're in crisis, that's an amazing thing. Okay, and you try this for the tobacco cessation, it works. Trust me, you try this in your clinic. Okay, when the patient is worried, when anybody is worried, okay, just go and stand in front of them and ask them this: how can I help you? Of course, it should be genuine. Okay, you can't be sarcastic. You should. That's why I'm telling. Empathy is very important. The genuine empathy is important. Okay, how can I help you? And they will just pour out. They just pour out. Okay, this is the open-ended questions. I'm just giving you examples. Affirmations. Okay, so you're kind of confirming and you're approving, and it's a cycle. Okay, so you can just tell the patients that, oh, that took a lot of courage to come to a TCC, right? Don't you think it's correct? It takes a lot of courage for a patient to walk in to a tobacco cessation center with the file in his hand, which kind of labels him as a smoker, right? So it does take a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to acknowledge that he has a problem. It takes a lot of courage to acknowledge that he needs help, right? And please tell this to patients genuinely. I've really enjoyed talking to you today. Okay, it's very, very important. Okay, you've been working really hard to quit smoking. Okay, you can make, or patients will tell, oh, I've tried so many times, doctor. I went to Shabarimala 1 month, I didn't do anything. After that, I started again. Ramadan is one typical example. 1 month I was fully this one, sir. Immediately after Ramadan, I started, sir. Again, I binged on smoking. So then it shows that they're really working hard. Okay, and the fourth sentence is pretty much, you can tell this to every patient in your clinic. Okay, I know that you are quite busy. Everybody is busy, right? You are busy, I'm busy, the whole world is busy, but things are not getting done, right? So that's the modern day conundrum, modern day cognitive dissonance it is, right? So you're all busy, but things are not getting done. Okay, and you should tell him, I appreciate you coming in today. Okay, so that genuineness should come through. And the patients will definitely tell, oh, I tried this, I tried that. Then you can always tell, oh, these are wonderful ideas to quit smoking or to decrease smoking. So these are your affirmations. So affirmation is you're confirming, you're standing with the patient. Okay, and it can be reflection and all that, but you're confirming with the patient. Reflecting, like you'll be repeating, if you read the last sentence, you're repeating, rephrasing or paraphrasing the feelings of the patient. So this is very important. Okay, so it looks like you are trying to quit, so you're reflecting. So from what I hear from you, what I hear you saying, so you're reflecting here. Okay, so these are sentences that you can direct verbatim tell to your patients. So on one side you say that smoking kills, but on the other hand you are saying that you cannot quit. So you're just reflecting what the patient is telling, his feelings rather. Okay, and summaries. Okay, so summaries are very, very important. Like I told you, person standing in the bus stop. Person is standing in the bus stop, that's all. Okay, so please, when you're summarizing, be careful. Okay, so please don't add, I know you got dejected, your girlfriend ditched you, you went mad, you went bonkers, so you took up alcohol. Come on, yeah. So you summarize it in a very neutral way. Okay, because of some personal tragedy, some personal setbacks, you felt there was a vacuum, whatever. So you have to essentially repeat what the patient tells. Paraphrase a little bit. It's like plagiarism, no? It should be plagiarized. This is the ulta of plagiarism. Okay, it should be like a little bit of paraphrasing is okay. Okay, here's what I've heard from you. Tell me if I've missed something. Tell me if I've not understood anything. Okay, so these are summaries. Guys, this is ORS. Okay, so this is a very popular acronym on the net and everywhere in CD programs, in all these programs. Oh, motivational learning is ORS. That they think. Okay, but of course it's core. It's core of MI, no doubt. There are few other things as well. So the spirit of motivational interviewing is very, very important. We'll come to the 8 stages of learning MI. If somebody wants to learn MI, so this is this spirit. Okay, the spirit I told you is collaborative, evocative, and respectful of client autonomy. Okay, so you need to understand this. You need to respect the patient here, irrespective of what it is. Okay, so if you have seen terminal cases of people with alcohol problems or even tobacco problems, with terminal stages of cancer who are admitted in hospitals, they'll start getting hallucinations. Okay, so they'll say, this is in ward. Okay, so nobody will be there. Okay, so they'll start hallucinating. So you, at any given point of time, you should not laugh at the patient. You should not that, all that we should avoid. It's a definite no. Okay, so many times I see this in canteens and with the UGs and even with the PGs. Oh, that patient came here, so much of calculus. Like, deep down inside, you should respect every single individual, right? So that's very, very important. Okay, and of course, motivational interviewing deeper down, it shares heavily with client-centered counseling and positive psychology. It shares very, very, very deeply. These client-centered counseling is patients will just pour out his opinion, his feelings, and then the counselor picks whatever is important and all that. Okay, so yes, definitely there it shares, but MI has branched out as a separate concept in itself. Okay, there are enough differences between these. Okay, and see, clients should not be viewed from deficit perspective, right? So what wisdom they have, they don't have, that should not be there. So don't confront, explain, and teach. Don't confront the patient. Do not explain to the patient. Do not teach the patient. So if you're doing that, that becomes client-centered approach. I'm not saying it is right or wrong. I'm just saying that it is not MI. If you're teaching the patient, it is not MI. It is. There are other names to it. Okay, you have cognitive behavior therapy, REBT, rational emotional behavior therapy, and there are other areas where clients are specifically given modules to learn and all that. That's different. Okay, so if you are teaching the patient, if you are giving something from your side, it is not MI. Okay, MI is full on the patient. Okay, I have what you need. So this is wonderful. Okay, I hope I'm not taking too much of your time. It's 2:30 already. Yes, I just give a small this one here and then move ahead. Theory class is a wonderful example of I have what you need. Okay, all theory classes work on the presumption that students don't know anything. That's the first assumption, right? Second thing is the teacher knows everything. That is the second assumption. Third assumption is the teacher talks. All that the teacher does is he talks. Okay. The fourth assumption is students will understand everything. Okay. They're supposed to understand everything. The fifth assumption is they'll reproduce this in the exam and pass. Why? Because you took theory class. Okay. This is a classical example of I have what you need, right? So many times in Viva, I have told this myself. Okay, trust me, I've told this 1,000 times in my life. In exam Viva, idiot, I told this in the class. You don't remember? I taught you so much. I told you in that day class before Diwali. After I told you don't remember. See, we rely too much on I have what you need. Okay, so that's against the spirit of MI. Okay. Second is ORS. Of course, we've discussed ORS. Okay, so you can definitely, I'll be sharing these slides. Those are sentences we can tell directly, verbatim, quote unquote, to the patients. Okay, change talk. Okay, change talk is one thing that you should wait for. It's like fishing, Fishing, it's not that immediately you'll go, fishes are all waiting for you to pick them up like flowers and you'll pluck them and it's not like that, right? So if you look at these job profiles, archaeologists, police, detectives, MI is motivational interviewing. 99% of their job is routine job. Okay, only 1% of job is like a breaking news type of jobs, no? Like earth-shattering, groundbreaking. They'll find one fossil somewhere here, there. Police will crack it. They'll find one robber, he'll tame. Detectives, they'll get breakthrough. 99% of the job is following the lead, taking photographs and listening through microphones. It's 99% of the job. So same with motivational interviewing. Vast majority of job is you have to wait. What should you wait for? Change talk. What is change talk? Change talk is he will tell patients that I want to change, doctor. I have the ability to change, doctor. I need to change because it's affecting my life. Okay, I need to change because I'm not looking good. So DARN is the acronym. DARN CAT. Okay, this is change talk. the moment you hear this desire is, I want to change. The moment you that's what you cannot say that, hey, idiot, you have to change. You cannot say that. Patient has to tell that I want to change. Ability, patient will say, I know that I can quit tobacco, doctor. I know. Reason he will give, it's affecting, I am not able to interact closely with my wife. My wife hates my breath. Okay. And alcoholics will definitely say it's high time that I change. Okay, because I hate going to parties nowadays because I over drink and I need to change, doctor. They'll say no. So DARN is the acronym. So there'll be many acronyms in today's discussion. DARN CAT. So the moment you see DARN, you jump on it. Okay, it's very, very important. The moment you see any of these statements, so these things should be running in your, these are your like metal detectors, no? They keep running. No? So the moment you hit these sentences coming from the patient, you have to tap onto those things. Okay, and then CAT is commitment. You'll have to make sure if the patient tells us it's wonderful, that I will definitely make changes, doctor, and activation, I'm ready. Like, of course, none of the patients will tell, but willingness to change. Okay, so is there taking steps? There are specific, they are willing to take specific steps towards change. Okay, so this DARN CAT is a very useful, DARN at least is a very useful acronym for identifying change talk. Okay, change talk, the opposite of change talk is sustained talk. I don't want to quit. Many of them will tell, it's my, if you talk to your friends outside the clinical in a very friendly environment, they'll say, at the end of the day, they'll say, mera paisa, my health. Like they'll talk like this, no, your friends. So that's called a sustained talk. So they are committed towards sustaining the same behavior. Okay. This is sustained talk. They don't want to change. They'll say, I don't want to change. It's as simple. Do you want to quit tobacco? No, I don't want to quit tobacco. Fine. Right? Can't change. I can't change. Your friends will tell. In case if you have tried tobacco cessation counseling techniques with your parents, with your fathers, like, so it'll be a more open discussion. Okay, they'll be mocking at you and you'll be like running for cover, but that'll be a good discussion. Okay. They'll give you reasons for sustaining status. See, they'll say, doctor, I'm a security guard. I have to stay awake in the night. So I take Gudka. Okay, so that's the reason they're giving. Okay, and need for status quo. They have to stay. My friends will all ditch me if I don't drink. Doctor will say. So they have to. So these are sustained talk. Okay, they're not going to change. They'll say, I am committed to this. Doctor, I know a neighbor of mine. Trust me, this is not a made-up story. After marriage, he had a bet with his friends. After marriage, I will not quit smoking. I'll smoke in front of my wife. Okay, he won the bet, but exactly at 60 years, he expired. Okay, at the end of, at 60 years, I remember him, he had 2 daughters. Okay, so he used to smoke at home. He was my neighbor. Okay, and ironically, he is from this part of Dakshin Kannada. Okay, Puttur and roundabouts. Okay, so he was committed to not changing because he had that bet with his friends. Okay, so you will see this sustained talk with patients. Definitely, you should elicit and strengthen the change talk. Okay, so in what ways this might be a good thing? Okay, you'll have to ask the patient. You have to reflect back to him. Okay, reflection is exactly like a mirror. No, you're placing a mirror in front of the patient. You should affirm, you should confirm and stand with the patient. Ask for elaboration and ask for examples. Okay, these work wonderfully. Okay, because they talk so much. Patient, they'll tell you. If you ask for elaboration, this is an example. Okay, in what ways quitting tobacco will help you, doctor? Okay, then oh, it's so much, doctor, or the ulta of it. In what way continuing will help you? Okay, then say they'll pour out. So ask for elaboration. Okay, ask for examples. Rolling with resistance. This is what we do with children, right? This is what we do with spouses. This is what we do with students, right? You cannot confront your client. We cannot confront your wife. Okay, so whatever it is, it's called as coming alongside. Okay, so if you want to go shopping, you are going shopping, huh? Correct, fine, I'll come with you. Like that's coming alongside, right? So you cannot confront your client. Then you'll have to say, you'll have to quote Warren Buffett. If you buy things that you don't want, then you'll have to sell things that you want. Darling, you should tell this to your wife. Correct. I should say, something like that, guys. Okay, so with clients, rolling with resistance is the trick with MI. Okay, you cannot confront the client. Okay, there are other counseling techniques which are heavy on confronting the client. Okay, if you look at CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, rational emotive behavior therapy, and they're like identify knowledge voids in clients and confront them. Like they're like that. Okay, I'm not being judgmental here, but if you're confronting your patient, it's not MI. Okay, developing a change plan. Okay, who will decide this change plan? The doctors will not decide this. The clients will decide this. Okay, the how and when, where, what, all the details will be given by the patient. Okay, change plan is not treatment plan. Okay, let's assume that patient comes for scaling or RCT twice, thrice, 3-4 times, right? So that's your treatment plan. Okay, change plan is I'll quit after Diwali next year or whatever it is. That's change plan. Okay, so it's not necessarily treatment plan. Patient can be coming to your dental hospital for treatment regularly once in 3 days, but change plan is not that. Okay, so that's different. Okay, so it is a client who decides what is needed, when, and how to proceed. Okay, the last sentence is amazing. A successful change plan will emerge with very little input, very little substantive input from the counselor. Okay, I read a wonderful statement that I passed my exams in spite of my teachers. Okay, this is a wonderful quote. This quote changed my life as a teacher. No, it's totally changed my life. Okay, then I realized, shucks, actually I'm more of an impediment to the students, right? So students are able to learn, read, and clear their exams in spite of me. My God. So that changed. It was a huge wake-up call for me. It was one of the sentences that changed my life in many ways. Okay, as a teacher at least. So the last sentence is wonderful. A successful change plan may emerge with very little substantive input from the counselor. Okay, and consolidating client commitment. You should consolidate. So court will say, no, Gita pe haath rakh ke ye kasam khata hu ki main sach kahunga, sach ke siwa kuch aur nahi kahunga, right? So satyavanna helida, satyavanna helide bere ennu heludilla, whatever it is, right? So that's a you're confirming and consolidating the client's commitment. Okay, that's very, very important. In weddings, no, they say I do you, so and so agree to take so and so as your lawfully, legally wedded wife. You say I do, right? Do you try with the best of abilities in health and disease and blah 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 to keep her in good health and spirits? The male will, both of them will never say I will try. No, there's no I will try. I should be doing it. I hope I will do it, and no, I do is I do, right? So that's commitment. Okay, so that's consolidating commitment. So these things, these concepts have been borrowed from these day-to-day experiences in MI as well. Okay, so switching between MI and other counseling methods, it's a very flexible method. This is trans-theoretical model of change, right? So we are all must kind of familiar with this PCPAM. So PCPAM is pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance. Okay, PCPAM, that's one of the mnemonics there. Where exactly does MI fit? If the patient is between pre-contemplation and contemplation, it works. Okay, so he knows, but he doesn't want to quit, and so there is that cognitive dissonance there, right? So there it works. So between preparation and action, he's prepared, he knows everything, but he's not doing anything. Okay, this sounds like my wife is talking to me. You know everything, but you're not doing anything. Whatever it is in those in between stages, MI works. MI works wonderfully. Okay, so advice. So in this is one slide which addresses the title of today's discussion: motivational interviewing in tobacco cessation counseling. So this, we all know, tobacco cessation counseling has 5 ways, right? Ask, advise, assess, assist, and arrange, right? So one of the key factors here is don't advise in the beginning. Right from the word go, don't advise. I have this habit of advising people, even if they don't ask. No, I've advised people in shopping malls. I've advised people in bus stops. I've advised people in railway stations. I've advised people in flight. I give advice every free because I don't use it myself. Okay, so don't start with advice. First ask the patient. Okay, this is one of the important aspects of 5 A's. Okay, of course you can go on and on about 5 A's, and you're all kind of familiar with 5 A's. Where does MI fit here? MI fits here in advice component. Okay, so only after you ask the patient. Okay, only if the patient wants some information, you can tell him some information. If he wants help to quit, then you can provide him help to quit. Okay, yes, these are the stages of learning MI. Okay, for you to equip yourself with MI, what you'll have to do is these are the stages. Okay, of course, there are subtle changes to your routine practice. Okay, so this one interesting that I came up with: 10 things that MI is not. What is motivation? What it is not? Okay, so MI is not based on trans-theoretical model of change. Okay, trans-theoretical model of change is a categorization for clinicians. Okay, very clearly it demarcates. Okay, for one person to move from, say, pre-contemplation to contemplation, MI works there. Trans-theoretical model of change is not active that way. Okay, whereas motivation interviewing can motivate the patient towards moving from one stage to the other, like point A to point B. It is not a way of tricking people into doing what they don't want to do. Okay, so it's not like you're tricking people into quit tobacco. Okay, you can never quit a person. You can never trick a person into quitting tobacco. Trust me. Okay, so they will hide from you and smoke. They'll have their own smoking addas. They'll have their own pit stops. Okay, so you can never trick your patients. Please remember that. Okay, so not just tobacco cessation. Anyways, there's no way you can trick your patients. They'll get to know somehow, somewhere, somehow they'll get to know. So MI is not a tricking method. It is not a technique. I told this to a few of my students. They're like, sir, then what is MI? Okay. So MI is a method. It's a communicative method. Okay, it's a clinical method. It's a communicative method, wherein you don't do anything. You just let the patient do everything. Don't be judgmental, and provide information that the patient wants. Okay. So see, democracy, one advantage of democracy is you have every right to be wrong. That is democracy. Sounds like marriage, no? Spouse has every right to be wrong. I am wrong. I have every right to, because it's my money. I have every right to be wrong. That's the right. Okay. So you at times you should just let go of patients, right? Like I told you, if the patient has to move from point A to point B, genuinely, he will move from point A to point B only if he's actually really motivated. Okay, so that's important. Okay, it's not a decisional balance. It's not pros and cons, right? Many times in many of the behavior change techniques, they ask the patient to write the pros and cons, and you decide, you take a call, and all. It's not that. Okay, and for all those individuals who are involved in NAC and quality control and assurance and all big names, one good news is it doesn't require feedback. Haba. Okay, I'm just kidding. Okay, see, we take feedback from students, from patients, from parents. Students will give feedback on the institution. Students will give feedback on the department. Students will give feedback on individual faculty. Okay, this is like feedback mania. It is okay. Everywhere there is feedback. Now there is this 360-degree feedback. No. Okay, wherein the junior faculty members can give their feedback on the HOD, right? So that's 360-degree. Sometimes I feel I was born in the wrong time here. When I was junior and when I was a student, we used to get whacked right, left, and center, right? It was Jungle Kanun. No, it was. Now again, no, don't scold the patients, don't scold the students, don't scold your wife, don't scold your children. Whom should I scold? Lock yourself in the room and yell at your own self. Like, in the sense that feedback is not required there. Okay, that's the moral of the story. You don't ask clients, how did you feel about this? How do you rate your interaction with the counselor? And that is not there here. It is not CBT. It is not a form of cognitive behavior therapy. Okay. Cognitive behavior therapy identifies specifically lacunae and there is no link between certain cognitions and behavior. I'm not saying it is wrong. Okay, there are many meta-analysis and systematic reviews which have shown the effectiveness of CBT in tobacco cessation. There's no doubt about it. Okay, but if you are looking at knowledge gaps and behavior change and all that, it is not MI. Okay, and it's just not client-centered counseling. Client-centered counseling is at times not goal-oriented. Okay, whereas MI is specifically goal-oriented. Okay, MI looks at specific behavior change. Okay, MI is not easy. This we knew before on this or what you're telling new thing. MI is not easy, but actually, if you look at if you look at practitioners, if you look at anybody do practice motivational interviewing, it will appear to be easygoing and smooth conversation. Okay, but it's actually not easy. Ninth one is very important. Motivational interviewing is not what you are already doing. Okay, if you talk to counselors, they'll say, "Arey Baba, we are doing all of this every day, doctor. Why are you telling this again and again?" there's a lot of difference. Okay, wherein there is nothing from your side, you're just being neutral. Okay, and then it's not directive. You don't give directions. It's not prescriptive. You don't prescribe anything to the patients. Okay, it's not a panacea. It's not a cure-all for all problems. Okay, MI is definitely not a panacea. Okay, so I hope I'm not confusing. So these are the differences between CBT and MI. Okay, CBT is essentially problem focus. It's your cognition. It's like brain and behavior is working, and it's more of that. Okay, so problem focused, formulation led. It relies heavily on schema, and expert led. It looks at thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Right, thoughts, your thinking process, your feeling, and your behavior. It links thoughts and behavior. Right, whereas this is motivation interviewing looks at values. What does the patient value? So is there cognitive dissonance? Look for cognitive dissonance and they redirect it towards behavior, positive behavior change. Okay, so change is a function of individual, whereas this, of course, is a change as a function of relationship. Okay, so motivational interviewing is humanistic, definitely. Carl Rogers, client-centered therapy, humanistic approach. It's definitely psychological. Whereas CBT is more of medical. So this is a common question that is asked. Okay, if you say that CBT and MI are different, how is it different? Okay, so it's essentially CBT is more of how and those things, whereas here it is more values and dissonance and behavior. Oops, 1 second. Yes, these are the core principles. Again, this is just a revision kind of a thing. Rule, please remember the rule. Resist writing reflex. So I have this writing reflex, okay, because we end up attending too many seminars and journal clubs. We'll find mistake in everything that the PG students tell, from the background to the font, to the animation, to the color, to the relative font, to the content, to meta-analysis, not the systematic use, not there, your interpretation, not there, you don't know anything, idiot. You look at the bibliography, look, no slide number, no animation. We are writing everything, no, right? We are correcting everything. So this happens to academicians. Okay, so we should resist from that with our patients. Okay, invariably we tend to correct it, right? So, and you will have to understand motivations. Okay, so you'll have to look at what motivates the person. Okay, and listen empathetically. Okay, this is very, very important. Genuine empathy is one of the foundation of medical science, if I can call it. Okay, genuine empathy. Okay, you should be genuinely interested in improving the health of others. Okay, and you should empower the patient. So that's very, very important. You have to make sure that the patient feels empowered. Okay, again, just giving you acronyms for you to get a different angle to MI. All are right. Okay, our resist is, of course, don't correct them. Please understand their motivation, listen to them empathetically, and empower them. That's the rule, right? That's what we discussed here also, right? Yep. So what is MI and what MI is not? Like I told you, we've discussed most of these things. It is not, it's an further explanation of those 10 steps that what MI is not. Okay. So these are the 4 processes of MI. First, you will engage the patient, you focus on cognitive dissonance, you evoke things from the patient, and then you plan. So for each of the steps, there are questions like what exactly do you ask? Okay, for engaging is what is the actual reality of the individual? You have to assess that. Okay, so this will rely on your regular routine clinical skill. Okay, whenever a CD patient comes, you will understand, oh, this patient has enough money, or he has some problems with his son or daughter-in-law. So you will address the reality of the individual. Then you should focus what should we address as a target to change. Okay, whether this is his thought process, his behavior, his motivation. Okay, and evoking, you have to evoke. You have to let the patient evoke his, pour out his opinion, his point of view. And then we'll have to plan. Okay, so these are ORs. We have dealt with ORs. DARES is there. So you develop discrepancy. The moment I tell you develop discrepancy, a few of my students were zapped. Sir, what, sir? You are confusing the patient. He'll go mad. He'll go bonkers. Arey yaar, this is cognitive dissonance. You are looking at cognitive dissonance. You have to increase that cognitive dissonance and move behavior change in a positive manner. Don't argue with patient. Roll with resistance, express empathy, and support, self-efficacy, self-esteem. Okay, you are empowering the patient. So I'm just giving you a set of acronyms for you to where you cannot use MI. Okay, there are no individuals, no practitioners, no counselors who say, I am exclusively doing MI. Nobody can say that. Okay, if you've seen a specialist, I'm exclusively ortho. Mom, I'm doing exclusively or max pack surgery. Like I'm like that is not there with MI. Okay, so this is for individuals who are not ready for change. Okay, if people are ready to change, the train is already on the track. Fatak, let it go. This is people wondering whether I should bungee jumping. You're there. If I jump, it's exciting. I can put on Insta and Facebook. If I don't jump, I'm scared to jump. Or what if I get heart attack and die? So it's there. MI works. Okay, if somebody is ready to jump, I am jumping. That's fine. It's like marriage, no? I'm getting married. Of course, you have to get married there. But you're in two minds. If I wait for 2 more years, few more time, I'll get a better model like that. Then MI works. Arey Baba, shut up. Whatever it is. Okay. I'm just giving an example. And certain lifestyle choices, it works. Certain lifestyle choices, it may not work. Okay. And for longer therapeutic interventions, it doesn't work. Okay. It's not meant for long therapeutic sessions. Okay. That's why it works wonderfully for tobacco cessation counseling, because TCC is supposed to be short counseling sessions. Okay, your NRT should be used only for 3 months, not more than 3 months. There are individuals who are addicted for nicotine replacement therapy, gums. No, they're addicted for that. That's a different thing. Okay, but MI is essentially a very short, brief sessions, brief interactions for just 3 to 4 sessions max. Okay, now this is the evidence. Somebody, wow, are you sure it works, doctor? Okay, there's one truckload of evidence, and it's not unambiguous. Okay, it's ambiguous is what I'm trying to tell you. This of course, blah blah blah, this at all, that at all, they've showed that MI can be effective for adults and adolescents. This is in 2010. Okay, and 2019 the updated review in Cochrane says that there is insufficient evidence. Okay, so but they're also careful in saying that future trials are likely to change these conclusions, Okay, they may or may not. But there is insufficient evidence now for tobacco cessation. MI in smoking cessation, not tobacco, it's smoking cessation. And third one is for oral health. They have done motivational interviewing in improving oral health, a systematic review in 2014. So they've shown that there is varied success. Okay, so sometimes it works, sometimes it may not work in improving oral health parameters. So it's just not smoking, it's like all oral health parameters. Okay, and this again is in 2016 by BDJ. MI has a potential for helping patients with poor oral health. Okay, it has the potential. Okay, so that's one catch there. So usually in most of my presentations, I put the definition first, and then start with definition, then go here it's ulta. I'm giving you the definition of the motivational interviewing towards the end. So motivational interviewing is a collaborative, person-centered form of guiding to elicit and strengthen motivation for change. So this is the definition. Okay, so of course it's collaborative. You just have to guide the patient. Okay, nothing else you can do. Okay, your main thing is you'll have to strengthen the motivation for behavior change. So these are again revision kind of a thing. Okay, Spirit is space, ORS is there, Darncat is there. Okay, so this is the framework of motivational interviewing. Spirit is there, principles, micro skills, macro skills, change talk. With the moment you look at Darncat, you have to elicit that further, get a commitment, and then move towards behavior change. Guys, this is my thoughts on motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is not prescriptive. You cannot write in a prescription, say do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. No. And who are you to suggest? Okay, so this was a very often repeated line in the training program that I attended. Okay, who are you to suggest the patient that the patient wants implants? Who are you to suggest? So that those things will have to come from the patient. Please avoid writing reflex. Okay, so please avoid correcting the patient. We always feel that patients are wrong, and we always have the gyan to correct the patients and all that. So you have to avoid that. Change talk. Change talk, it relies heavily on change talk. You will notice change talk, what it is. Okay. And motivational interviewing is definitely not a translatable model of change. It's not cognitive behavior therapy. It's not client-centered counseling. It's not all of that. It relies on strengthening the motivation of the patient. Okay. Thank you, guys. There's one other example that I would like to end my presentation with. I'm not a movie buff. Okay. Nor do I endorse any movie star or something like that. Upendra was the name of a movie directed by our famous star, that is Upendra. For those of you know who or what Upendra is, you'll understand this. After he made Upendra, no, he said, all my audience will watch the movie twice. Okay, first thing they'll see, in the end, you know, towards the climax, there's some big philosophy is put in his typical inimicable style. Okay, he said, after that, you'll watch the movie again. He said, okay. Me and my friends were looking at each other, we were laughing at, I mean, then grudgingly, we have to admit that it's correct. He's right. Okay, so Upendra, that movie was one amazing, like out of the world. I'm not recommending that movie to you also. I'm just giving it as an example because I couldn't come up with any other example. Okay, the movie Upendra also stands for you, who is Upendra, and the three heroines. Okay, I'll try this. Okay, Pa is Prema, Da is Damini, Ra is Ravina. Yes, if I'm right. Okay, this was long back that I saw this. Yesterday night I was thinking what example to give. Okay, so he had the guts to tell that all the audience will watch minimum twice this movie. He said, okay, like that he said, okay, and okay, what I'm trying to tell is the slides are there with the organizers. Please have a look at the slides again. So now I can confidently tell that I did a Upendra in my life. That you will kind of have a relook at the slides and your counseling practices, if I can add that. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. That was wonderful, and especially the examples that you gave us will, made it more clear. And the last one was the best, I think, because those who watched Upendra once really didn't understand anything. Thank you. Yeah, and I would like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Manjunath Puranik, Head of the Department of Public Health Dentistry at Government Dental College and Hospital. So thank you for being here and encouraging and supporting us. And also I would like to thank Dr. Audrey D. Cruz, Head of the Department of Public Health Dentistry at AB Shetty. She's also been here with us since the beginning of this presentation. Thank you, Audrey. Now I hand over to Dr. Imran.
So we had few questions asked previous to the topic. The first question was, what is the most effective method of tobacco cessation for low socioeconomic group who use tobacco as a mean to conduct their daily menial job? One of the participants had asked the question.
Who use tobacco as a means of
daily menial job? Yeah.
Daily menial job. Okay. Are they employed in the tobacco industry or they are outside doing menial jobs outside the tobacco industry?
Yes, I think so. Basically, they are addressing all the low socioeconomic status. Basically, correct. They want to know how do we, do this motivational interviewing or any other techniques.
See, one thing is, I would definitely suggest you to go with 5 A's. Okay, because there's a lot of evidence for effectiveness of 5 A's. Okay, so and 5 A's is also compatible with stages of change by Prochaska and Decrementa, PCPAM. Okay, so if at any given point of time, if you think there is dissonance, there is cognitive dissonance, if you think the individual is in between this stage and that stage, we don't know what to do. If in those kind of dilemma, then motivational interviewing works. Okay, so that is why for that particular patient, in general, I would say 5 A's as the first step. And secondly, I would say if there is any confusion, if there is any dilemma, then you can apply 5 A's. Specifically, if one specific answer is, you can offer him alternatives for tobacco to do his menial job. Okay, supposing he says that I'm a security guard. Okay, I have to have tobacco. I have to chew tobacco because I need to stay awake. Then you can tell him there are so many other things with which he can stay awake. Tea is there, coffee is there. Somf is there, all the home remedy spices are there, lavang is there, cardamom is there, those things are there. He can drink water, he can wash his face with water. And then there are 4 Ds, no? Delay, take a deep breath. One sec. Drink lot of water. Okay, and postpone. Okay, so 4 Ds are there, so you can try that technique as well with the patient. so there is no formula kind of a thing. Okay, so you'll have to hit the patient with many different techniques and see what works with the patient. Everything might work at one point of time. Like, 5 A's as a framework will work. Motivational interviewing will help the patient move ahead in counseling. Alternative home remedies will help in giving you the alternatives to the patient. Okay, so you'll have to hit these patients with a barrage of approaches. Okay.
Thank you, sir. And one more question was, how do we advise our own family members, uncles who smoke and are likely not to take us seriously?
Yes, I know it's a very common problem that I myself have faced. Okay. It's always tricky. Okay, it's always tricky. You'll always have to be neutral and non-judgmental. Okay, so with close friends, you can always give them evidence. Like, you can tell them that these are the ill effects. These are the actual ill effects. You can personalize them. Okay, so one second. Yeah, there's quite a bit of background noise. Can I do something about it? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes. With close relatives, you'll roughly do the 5 A's only. Okay, because that still provides a good framework. One thing is, don't be too judgmental. Okay, and don't take too much of offense. They'll jump on you and say you are wrong. You are like, don't take offense, and don't be too judgmental, because don't view everything in a very negative manner towards them. Oh, this guy smokes, and this uncle, no, don't get too negative. You'll have to be patient with them. Okay, because they take that liberty of asking very irritating questions to you because they're close to you. So be patient. Okay, and the principles of counseling are the same, whether it is your uncle or Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Narendra Bhai Modi or whoever it is. The principles of counseling will essentially remain the same. Okay, because human behavior is the same, right? Everywhere it will be the same. Just that with the special circumstances that you are in with your relative, be a little bit more patient. And see, the advantage of your uncle is you will have the opportunity for reinforcement. You'll meet him every now and then, sir, uncle, like that you can just say that. He'll understand that you're talking about not smoking, right? So it works wonderfully that way. So there are definitely plus and minus, but be a little patient. That's the biggest thing I can tell you. Rest of the things you will probably know.
Puranik sir, would you like to say something, sir?
Yeah, excellent presentation, Dr. Rajesh.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I was not aware
as usual,
that you are here.
Anyway, as usual, I enjoy your presentation. More than that, you gave a lot of clarity about MI, CBT, and more than what it is not. Because I think this is something which all of us should understand.
Yes, sir.
And after reading certain literature, we think we understand. But there is a lot of things we can learn. Excellent presentation, Dr. Rajesh, and Dr. Rekha, thanks for the opportunity, and all your staff members.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks.
Like I'll be quoting Praveen Jodali now, because I've been interacting with Sir Manjunath Puranik sir since my PG days, and sir has been an excellent source of support. So whenever we have any doubts, we have had so many instances where I've called personally, sir, and inquired about so many things. It's always an honor, pleasure, and privilege to listen from him. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, so
I'll second you.
We all have mentors then.
Yeah, very true. Definitely, it's peer learning. It is definitely you learn more from peers than from formal sources.
True, sir. Sir, excellent presentation, especially the Upendra thing.
I couldn't think of anything else. Okay, because it's that's the best the closest that it gets to the reality.
Yeah, agreed.
I second what Dr. Rajesh said, because there have been innumerable occasions when I have called up Puranik sir for so many things, and his counsel has always helped. And I really think that it's our turn to express gratitude to sir for the support that he has given us throughout our professional career. Rajesh, can I please ask you something? Can you suggest any places, any specific places or courses in motivational interviewing which you think our listeners today would benefit from?
Ma'am, there's a huge conflict of interest in this. Much on a lighter note, I'll tell, please come to us. I'm just kidding. Okay.
No, definitely.
No, ma'am, in 2018, we had a workshop. You'll not believe it. We just had 19 participants. We publicized it with all guns blazing. Facebook, WhatsApp, Insta, we hit everything. We got only 19.
I attended them.
Yes, Lakshmi was there with us. Okay, so we were, after the inaugural program, ma'am, that was pre-COVID, we were thinking whether we should shift it to our department. Like within the department, it can be held. If few people sit, it was that less. Okay, including the organizers, we were 30 of us only. Okay, but we enjoyed it like so much. The resource persons are from Manipal, ma'am.
Okay.
I would like to add here that, as Sir said, it was a 2-day workshop, and still I was feeling that there is so much to learn. So I'm sure within 1.5 hours, Sir has touched upon most of the things and tried to do justice to the topic. However, I with the caution that every student here, everybody who's listening to Sir, should take this up and learn more in order to practice this. Otherwise, it's not going to be of any help.
Yes, very true.